Hey guys, how's it going? So I'm doing a review on the Galaxy Book 4 Edge. I spent a month with this Galaxy Book 4 Edge, just trying to see if I can make this my main laptop. As much as I love my gaming laptops, they're a bit big, so when I'm just doing regular tasks, researching things, checking email, doing my 9 to 5, I definitely want something smaller and thinner. This, in many situations, fits the bill. Because of how small and thin and light this is, I've never used a 16-inch laptop that's under 3.5 pounds. Being how large a screen versus how light it feels is something I've never really experienced in a laptop before, not even with any of the MacBooks. Those still manage to have some weight to it. It's crazy how slim and thin this laptop is. But speaking of that though, I think Samsung did a little bit too much to try to make their laptop thin. And one reason is with these tapered edges. I don't know why they decided to do that. I guess maybe on a spec sheet they can say that this is probably the thinnest laptop out there because they'll be measuring it from the center, but it tapers out and it ends up being the same dimensions as the back here where the ports are, so it doesn't make any sense. They could have used the space to put better speakers, maybe a bigger battery, more ports, etc. And I'm saying better speakers because I'm kind of foreshadowing. I'll get to that a little bit later on, but since we're already here, let's look at some of these ports. USB Type A, man, really happy to see that. I'm not ready to let that go yet. Headphone jack. Unfortunately, it's not a very good sounding headphone jack, but I'm happy it's there. 2 USB Type C ports, and these are USB 4s, and they support 65 watts of charging and display port, but unfortunately, it's not able to properly connect to my Samsung Odyssey G9 57-inch. The resolution is essentially two 4Ks, kind of like sandwiched together. Unfortunately, it's only able to hit half of that at 5120 by 1440. And same with the Odyssey G8, I'm not able to get the full 4K 240 hertz. The Snapdragon X1 chips don't allow it. Kind of unfortunate. HDMI 2.1, you're dealing with the same limitations as I just mentioned with the display port. So let's take a tour of the back. One thing I don't like are these rubber feet. They feel hollow, cheap, and plasticky, and there's just not much grip. So it slides around on a table really easily, and this desk mat actually has a lot of grip on its own. So the fact that I'm able to do this just isn't good. It doesn't really inspire much confidence, and when it's on my lap, it's always kind of like sliding downwards. But anyway, these are small little nitpicks, and I'll be doing a whole bunch of those little nitpicks. Like another example is this wobble. A lot of people see this and they get really annoyed by it, but if it wasn't for the purposes of a review, I wouldn't even be mentioning it. This is fine. This is not going to be an issue. It doesn't wobble when you type, even if you do type aggressively. So that's nothing to be concerned about. But here's one good thing about not just this laptop, but just any Copilot Plus PC now with the Snapdragon X processors in it, is the standby time and the fact that the laptop can sleep and it'll stay in sleep for sometimes like 2 days. And every time you open it up, you're always right back in. Every single x86 laptop out there, after a while of being in sleep, it'll go into hibernation mode and then you'll have to boot up from the beginning and it takes like 30 to 40 seconds to get back in. This is instant. And I do like having a fingerprint reader here. I would have also liked to see Windows Hello in terms of the IR cameras like all the laptops have too. I feel like in some situations that is a little bit more convenient just because it requires no action on your part. Once you open up the lid, the camera reads your face and you're in. I know I'm being lazy, but this just requires you to stick out your finger and have it register. But it registers quickly and it works great. So now, this part has been a little bit controversial, how large this entire keyboard deck area, and one reason how they're able to do that is because you can see the bottom bezel is actually really, really big. And that provides a few benefits. Again, you are able to get a larger surface area, but the screen ends up sitting a little bit higher, so you're not really straining your neck as much to look at the screen comfortably. I have found that to be helpful, even though it's not aesthetically pleasing to look at this very chunky bottom bezel. Another benefit that it gives you, and as you can see here, is this gigantic trackpad. This is by far the biggest trackpad I've ever seen on a laptop, and it is amazing to use, man. Like, having all this real estate just really makes life a lot easier, and it's not something you'd ever realize until you actually use it. And when I went back to using the Surface laptop with their teeny tiny trackpad, it was not fun to use. So like, I'm not doing like these micro scrolls anymore. I could just do like longer strides. It just requires less effort. It's the same thing with just tracking throughout the screen too. I'm able to track from all four corners of the screen without ever touching the edge, so it just makes it a lot easier. One issue I do have with the trackpad though is, while it is very precise and it does glide well, when you're just trying to move it slowly though, I have found that it doesn't register as well. Maybe the polling rate on the trackpad isn't as high as some other laptops out there. If you're doing something like in Photoshop or Lightroom, where you're just moving around sliders, it might be a little bit more uncomfortable to use compared to some of the other laptops you've used before. Not a big deal. This is just me nitpicking because I use so many laptops. And another thing I've noticed is the latency is a little bit higher than what I've seen in other laptops. I feel like 90% of the people out there won't even notice that, so I'm just nitpicking. Next is the keyboard, and this is where another thing that was disappointing at first. My first impressions of this keyboard was negative because it's using a membrane style keyboard. So the thing with membrane keyboards is they're a little bit cheaper to manufacture, and it does kind of feel like it. It doesn't feel as high quality as the Surface laptop's keyboard or the MacBook's keyboard, which use more of a chiclet style keyboard. But it's fine. The more I used it, the more I not only got used to it, but I actually really enjoyed using it. The spacing of them is really nice. There is not much travel, but with a laptop this thin, you can only ask for so much. But the more I use it, I actually found this keyboard incredibly satisfying to use. And because of the type of work I do, I like having a number pad. But one issue I have with this number pad though is it's not a full proper number pad. The plus and minus signs are supposed to be on the right, so this destroys my entire muscle memory. Lenovo is able to do it with their ThinkPads and even their Legion line of laptops. Lenovo probably still makes the best keyboards out there. Again, just another small nitpick. Another thing I like about it too, because this laptop is kind of like a blue color, and by the way, let me talk about that really quickly. This is called Sapphire Blue, and the Surface Pro 11 is also called Sapphire Blue, and when you have them side by side, they look nothing alike. But anyway, I digress. One thing I like about the keys, it is a blue color, and it complements the sky blue or I guess quote unquote sapphire blue on this laptop really well. And it just adds to the elegance in terms of the design of this laptop. But anyway, good keyboard. The speakers we'll talk about really quickly. They are bottom firing, and yeah, as you're expecting, bottom firing speakers just don't sound as good. So unfortunately, the speakers on this laptop I would say, are mediocre at best. The bass isn't quite there. The mids don't have much clarity to it, and the highs get distorted and sound tinny at medium to high volumes. I think there's a lot more they could have done with these speakers, and especially after using the Surface laptop and especially the Surface Pro 11. And oh man, don't even get me started about MacBook speakers. It sounds good enough for like spoken word content, so for like YouTube videos, podcasts, video meetings, etc. But the moment you try to listen to some music on it or watch a movie on it, I think you'll be a little bit disappointed with the speakers. So something I hope that they could improve on next year. And one way they could do that is by not having this unnecessary taper here. So speaking of meetings, I have been using this at work, and at work I probably do like 2 to 3 meetings a day, sometimes more. Both the camera and the microphone quality have been really good. Okay, so next I want to talk about the camera, and that's something I never ever talk about in any of my videos because usually webcams are terrible on laptops, all of them. But because this has an ISP, which is an image signal processor, since Qualcomm makes the Snapdragon chips that's on pretty much every single Android phone, they mostly use the ISP that's built into that chip. Unless you're big like Google with their Pixel series, or Sony with their Xperia line, or Samsung with their Galaxy phones where they're able to have their own ISP. Most other Android phones just use the ISP built in, and it looks really good. It does a good job processing videos. My skin tone looks good. The background is holding up really good too. So yeah, really happy with that. And I mean, you've probably seen a whole bunch of other videos so far with these studio effects where you could just do different blurs and stuff. And I will say this looks incredibly natural compared to using it in Microsoft Teams or Google Meet, etc. So this is the portrait blur, which looks more natural to me. And then there's a standard blur, which does more of a blur. Portrait blur tries to simulate the actual depth of field. So as you can see, the microphone is closer to me, but the painting behind me is further away, so it's supposed to simulate the way a camera works, where the further away something is, the blurrier it is. And it's doing a really good job. And it also seems like Samsung added a whole bunch of different filters. And the fact that this is all happening in real time using the NPU on the Snapdragon on the Snapdragon X Elite. I want to talk quickly about the display. This is by far one of the best looking displays I've seen. Samsung Display makes the OLED panels for almost every single OLED laptop you've seen out there. And I don't know if maybe they're saving the best for theirs, but man, this is a fantastic looking screen. Unfortunately, it doesn't get as bright as the Surface Pro 11's OLED screen, 550 nits versus less than 450 nits on this, and that does kind of make a difference. But one thing that really helps this is the anti-glare coating that Samsung uses. And it's the same type of coating that they use on the S24 Ultra, and it does an excellent job of rejecting glare while still retaining the clarity of the OLED panel. And this is one of the sharpest looking screens I've ever seen. Videos look fantastic on it. There's just some things going on it that it won't just show up in measurements. One thing I will say though, that Samsung has a whole bunch of different profiles, which is always nice. I do like to see that, especially if I'm doing creative tasks. Like sometimes you would want to be in sRGB, you would want DCI-P3, Adobe RGB, etc. But unfortunately, all of these are incredibly inaccurate. You're getting wrong white balances for all of them. So what I ended up having to do was create my own ICC profile. So I had to run my calibration software through this. And then this is what I came up with. And then what I found was the gamma was a little bit off on all of Samsung's profiles too, where the shadow started to look crushed. I think one reason why they do that is to make things pop more. It shows a better contrast, but unfortunately it's just not accurate. And what I've noticed with this laptop, the white balance shifts a lot. It'll look warmer and cooler. What really scares me is if I'm doing creative tasks, having a wrong white balance could really screw up your project. So overall with the display, weird issues with it, but overall a great panel. Alright, so next I want to talk about battery life. I started my 9 to 5 with 80% battery one morning, and when I was done that entire day, I was down to 15%. And that might not sound great, but I was running this screen at 75% brightness, adaptive refresh rate, which runs from 60 Hz to 120 Hz, and everything just felt like it was mostly at 120 Hz. I've always either had Spotify or YouTube in the background while doing a whole bunch of crazy tasks that I would typically do for my 9 to 5, like with like larger, more complicated spreadsheets. Like I said, I have like 3 to 4 meetings a day. So I mean, this laptop was getting worked. And the fact that I still had room left over after a day, I like with most of my x86 laptops, and I've tried using all of them for my 9 to 5. Thankfully, my job is in the cloud, and we use Microsoft Office, so I could easily bounce around from laptop to laptop without having to install like different software and stuff. And all of those last 3 hours, 4 hours max. I'm excited to see what the future holds for x86 with Intel's Lunar Lake and the Ryzen 9 AI chip that they're coming out with very soon. So I didn't want to do too much crazy benchmarks in this video. I'll save all my big benchmarks for that, but I did run Cinebench 2024 on this laptop just to get an idea of how this compares to the other two Copilot Plus PCs I've had, and it does better. But to get there, though, I did have to turn on high performance mode in both the Samsung settings and in the Microsoft settings. And to get those higher scores, though, this laptop got hot, like gaming laptop hot. The bottom became too hot to probably rest on your lap. That's where this ventilation came in. Other than that, I don't really see the fans kicking in ever. So I don't think you have to be worried if you're just doing regular tasks about the system being choked by blocking the ventilation if this is on a bed or a carpet, etc. And the keyboard deck got really warm too. The top of the laptop got hot, like not warm to the touch, but hot. So other than the purpose of benchmarks, or if I was doing like some kind of crazy export or something that really requires like a high amount of performance, I don't think I would really be using those high performance modes in general. And plus, obviously, that's going to destroy your battery life more. So even though there's a few nitpicks with it, just the way everything just comes together just has honestly become one of the best laptops I've used, just in terms of a regular productivity laptop or a laptop to use for fun, to watch videos or to take to school, etc. So let me guys know what you think in the comments. If I missed anything, just ask me and I'll answer down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks guys, bye.